Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our one-on-one session. Here are our speakers, co-founder Dega, Tony DeSanto, and founder and CEO electus, Ben Silverman.
How are you? So thank you for having us here, and we're excited actually to interview Ben Silverman, a media entrepreneur, producer, just all-around great guy. So actually, I want to start with you and I have been friends for 3 or 4 years, but I've always admired your career path. I've always loved how you brought an entrepreneurial spirit to everything you've done. And I wanted to start at the beginning. I'd love to hear a little bit of how you got started at William Morris after working at New World with Brandon Tartikoff, and how you really pioneered the concept of importing international formats.
Well, I was sent over to the William Morris office in London to work in what at the time was kind of a little rabbit hutch type space on the 3rd floor. It felt like I was in the Harry Potter under the closet kind of office. And the original assignment was to go package films and television shows globally and potentially sign the next Gerard Depardieu or somebody, or Hugh Grant, who was hot at the moment. And then I spent a lot of time with a guy I really enjoyed and was connected to, who was the chairman emeritus of William Morris, named Lou Weiss. And Lou looked to me and said, "Stop wasting your time with all this co-financing and international co-production. Formats, young man, formats." And his memory was more served by All in the Family than anything that had recently gone on to air, but he was completely correct, and recognized early, out of necessity, the European markets were making a lot of programming that was less expensive and immediately impactful, but also more disposable, because they didn't have yet the secondary markets that we have developed in America. Obviously, NATPE, the greatest market for that secondary off-network concept. So that was also an opportunity out of necessity for some really interesting creativity. Mm-hmm. And the first thing that really broke it was a scripted show called Cracker, but the thing that lit the whole format business on fire was Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And I just remember sitting down with David Litterman, who was running the ITV network at the time, and I would call on him and visit with him, and I asked him what programs he had coming up he was excited about, and he mentioned Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and how he would program it over 2 weeks in prime time. And I immediately said, who doesn't want to be a millionaire? That is the best idea, the best concept. I have to have it. Send me to the producer. And then I met Paul Smith. And then once that show took off in the States, anything afterwards from the network perspective domestically was, what else do you got, Ben? And really built a great business.
It's great. And that business became a sort of a founding principle of your company, Reveille, importing formats, but also obviously creating a great content and great hits from scratch, like The Tudors or Biggest Loser. And I thought what was great about Reveille was the creative diversity, everything from formats to scripted drama to comedy, to scripted comedy like The Office. And I thought you done an amazing job of having such a high creative bar, but also in terms of the importation of curating great ideas, but also adapting them so brilliantly. You've had great success with the adaptations, and we all know it's not as easy as just bringing a show over and changing the dialect, changing the language. Tell us, what do you think the key to that success in the U.S. adaptation of a foreign format or show is?
Well, I think there were two things. One of the things to the top of that question around Reveille that I was recognizing was that the European markets and Australia, which had been the prime drivers of the format creativity, were kind of equalizing, and that there was a real opportunity in the American market to take on and make some great programming again. In the format side, we continue to always do the most expensive and highest quality dramas and comedies anywhere in the world. But from a format perspective, there was going to be a big opportunity as well to be an exporter of formats, mm-hmm. not just an importer. And one of the first shows we created, The Biggest Loser, has been incredibly successful, and we built a big distribution operation out of that. And so that was one element. And then as you look at adapting formats, I think a real opportunity that we have in electus and that we saw then is you have to identify the absolute appropriate person to be the adapter of the format. And a lot of companies that have gotten very big own end users in all these markets, and they align somebody who makes a game show with a sitcom, and that's never going to come out as perfectly as finding the absolute best piece of talent to work on a specific program with you. And in the case of The Office, that was Greg Daniels, who was just a brilliant, brilliant creative mind, somebody I'd always wanted to work with, and bringing him into that process early and really having an opportunity with Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant to go to, as I called it, a master class around The Office in London for 3 days and learn all that architecture. But then knowing after we did a pilot that was very similar to the initial episode of The Office, that we had to really own it for America in a more optimistic way than the British show is. And that became a key shift in how the characters and the Jim and Pam love affair would play out, and how the optimism of the American society had to be imbued inside that show in a way that it wasn't in the British version as much. It was, it was a much tougher watch, although obviously beyond hysterical.
Great. Another key component of your strategy, is unique relationships with advertisers. Organic, symbiotic relationships that benefit all the partners. And now it's a lot more commonplace. But you had the foresight to see that it was going to be a very key component of content in the future, and you were focused on getting it right from the early stages. And if you could tell us just a little bit about the first couple of experiments or the first couple of relationships you did with Reveille, and where you think things succeeded and where maybe they didn't succeed as well.
Well, while at William Morris, I had an epiphany tied to what was then the late 90s explosion in the internet, and was thinking how everyone was talking and beginning to talk about TiVo in the TV landscape, but it was more and more obvious to me it was just about digital delivery, and that digital delivery opened up a lot of opportunity, but was going to create a major issue between the main underwriter of traditional television, the advertiser, and how their spots would be consumed by an audience that now was going to have a fast forward, a pause, a stop, and an ability to watch on demand anytime. It was early days and ahead of its time in terms of the speed with which that broadband and the tools were going to be developed that could really impact that. But it was something that was incredibly obvious to me wasn't going to be inevitable. And so I thought, wait, if I'm sitting here with all these great ideas, all this intellectual property, much of it already filmed because they were formats was a big part of the business. And I moved to New York to get closer to the advertising community while at William Morris, having left their London office, and started courting the Fortune 100 companies based there and working very closely with the advertising agencies and holding companies. And that's a product placement. Is it Verizon? We got a good shit. And working very closely with the advertising community. And you could sense there was a desire to be closer to content and a desire to work with the creative community, but there were still massive, roadblocks and not really any kind of systematic way to bring these two worlds together. But developing the primary one-to-one relationships with the stakeholders on both sides, people who had, television ideas and people who had brand marketing messages and stories they needed to tell, and connecting them was going to take individual phone calls. And one of the first shows we did was a show called The Restaurant. It was one of the first shows we launched out of my old company. And that show was, completely partnered and underwritten by American Express, Coors Light, and Mitsubishi. And that was a game changer, but it really happened because of the stakeholders involved. John Hayes himself was a champion of it. And then Blowout, which followed and was another success with American Express and Revlon, and the advertising agency partners from Deutsch and IPG and other places really embraced it too. And And then you just saw an accelerator, and where I think we're seeing the most acceleration in it is what's going on online right now. We're seeing small bits of it inside the traditional television landscape, but we're seeing a massive flood in the online world.
Absolutely. And in the early days, what was the reaction from creatives and networks and?
I remember a friend of mine, I don't know if he's in this room, he may be at Sundance, Scott Donaton at the time was the editor of Ad Age, and he just blasted me. He said, this is the death of the world, and television is over, and I can't believe it, and how could this happen? And in the main title sequence, there's Rocco DiSpirito's driving this car, and all this. Now Scott Donaton runs a company that is a branded entertainment specialist, and about maybe once every 2 weeks, he calls me with a pitch on how we should be, doing what was something we did 10 years ago. And so sometimes being early is lonely, but usually being first enables you to get a lot of the benefit of helping push forward something and getting some of the premiere in Miami beachfront real estate. So,
Right,
it really helped.
Well, so I think...
And the shows have to work.
Right.
The thing about the restaurant, it delivered a high rating, a compelling show. People had never seen the docusoap before, especially on broadcast, and it really pushed a creative boundary. And in fact, the second season, NBC not only picked it up, but they said, we want to sell the ads now. And they reversed our business structure.
It's a big, loud idea.
Exactly.
Big hook. So, international relationships, the unique relationships with sponsors, the importance of putting the right people on the right projects to elevate the creative, all of that stuff that we touched on, I want to now go on to the next phase of your career, which was NBC. So you wanted to bring your entrepreneurial spirit to the corporate structure and took on the position of the chairman of NBC. And I think what you realized early on was that in this age and particularly as we move further and further into the future, it's not just enough to just think of it in terms of traditional linear programming. You need to sort of blow up the model. Hits are more important now than ever before, but you push for profitability. New models for production efficiency. Like I remember you told me about the Merlin model, where you had this really high budget, beautifully produced scripted series that really only cost you $200,000 an episode. So the margin for success in terms of a ratings number was lower, and the profit was obviously larger. You worked in terms of, you always looked for new strategic partnerships. I remember when I was president of programming MTV, you and I had done I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here together, and we got a second window on that series, and you guys got promotion in some of our talent. Stuff, relationships with sponsors, even getting through the writer's strike by using your reality experience to fast track ideas like American Gladiator, or to get I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here on air quickly. And I think that what I'm most curious about, having just come from the corporate position, the president of programming job at MTV, what was it like being an entrepreneur, trying to bring that spirit into that environment? What were the challenges? Where do you think you succeeded? Where do you think you failed?
Well, I think that the climate of a labor dispute that was something that we kind of thought was not going to play out. As I'm watching one of the greatest football seasons in history, and then I keep hearing this kind of looming conversation about the 18-game schedule and the labor thing, and I'm just thinking, oh my God, you're going to kill your golden goose, guys. Don't do it. And having just lived through it and arriving at NBC in the midst of the strike, and what turned out to be also a almost strike by the Screen Actors Guild as well, it was incredibly challenging, but opened up a lot of those kind of entrepreneurial ideas. But what I didn't realize is that everyone else was not going to judge it based on its kind of margin success or innovation success. At the end of the day, it was just going to be judged on what it had always been judged on, how many people watched it. And if anything, even the disconnects that were really interesting to me were how so much of the people who kind of follow and are invested as fans of the business of television, still also used rating numbers tied to total households, not 18 to 49 or 18 to 34, and the kind of lack of depth of understanding. And instead of trying to be somebody who wanted to ingratiate and build a conversation and an education process, I kind of took on an attitude of, well, they'll figure it out. And probably wasn't the best operational style. And then the other thing is, if you are an entrepreneur, it's really hard not to be an entrepreneur. And that's something that I just very much realized. One of the fun things about being sent to London as a young guy in a talent agency was they basically said, go, you eat what you kill. And here's your franchise. The franchise is you're an agent. Here's the business card, go make the phone calls. And I used to say all the time, it was like the greatest opportunity to run around. But that's exactly the kind of things I love to do, is to build businesses and to grow new models. And it's really hard when you have to protect an existing business as aggressively as everyone who has one of those big existing businesses has to do. And that change is impossible as one person. The other thing that you learn in retrospect in going in, and you had a great team that you built at MTV, but you really need to have your team in place, and you need to immediately, and we see, Bob Greenblatt taking a lot of aggressive steps already in how he's transforming the executive structure underneath them. You can't do it alone, because the people who've done it for the 30 years before you got there and have watched 17 people take that chair and then move on, they're basically entrenched in the way they do their business, and they're going to continue to do it in the same way.
I always looked at your career, like each job almost seemed like a prep school for the next job. You absorbed as much information as you could, and it really helped you sort of set up the next thing you were going to do. And Electus seems to be the culmination of the 20 years of experience and all the information you've gleaned and experiences you've had. It's really a next generation studio, a virtual version of a brick and mortar media company. And I just would love to hear from you directly the philosophy behind Electus. The impetus for it, where it started, everything about like your sort of philosophy for it and how you see the business working.
Well, I was looking at a lot of the trends that had been things that I had touched upon and felt very confident in, from international distribution to identifying good ideas to reaching out to advertisers. And something I recognized inside a large company was that there were so many silos within the big company structures that kept the key stakeholders apart from each other, meaning the person who ran advertising didn't communicate on a daily basis with the person who ran the creative, or the person who ran the secondary distribution or the international distribution didn't talk on a daily basis with the person greenlighting the content or the programming. And there's such an opportunity in today's world. Convergence is no longer just a technology term. Convergence is a modern day cultural term. It's fashion as entertainment. It's retail as experiential event. It's sports as as platform. All of these things have kind of defined and changed. And I thought there was this massive gap to build a company that had inside it all the core competencies of an integrated marketing team. We have Laura Caracoli-Davis, who's one of the best executives in that world, of the digital marketplace, which we are at Electus incredibly focused and committed to, and bringing in Jordan Hoffner, who ran YouTube content partnerships out of Google, and Drew Buckley, who had run Yahoo Studios, and bringing in creative teams and creative visionaries to execute the best ideas, but have an ability on a daily basis to access what the marketplaces were, foreign, advertising, television, within one company. And I think that part of the consolidation that happened in the media and advertising business has created these massive entities that have, even though they have it all under one roof, they're in separate countries, you know, and not able to connect on a daily basis. So that was the main thesis. Was I drew a circle that I showed Barry Diller, who was the only person I approached about doing the business, and in that circle were these different functionalities and arrows connecting them. And I had this whole PowerPoint, and we were at breakfast at the Carlisle, and I remember him ripping that sheet of paper out, and he goes, "That's it." And then he left, and we made a deal the week later.
That's great. That's great. Well, we got, and we're running short on time. We have two important things to get to, so I just wanted to first to bring it full circle back to international, the announcement about Engine, if you could tell the room about that.
Yeah, so we're really excited to be in business with Engine. We just brought them into Electus to be our distribution company, and Chris Phillip and Chris Morton had done a great job over the past 18 months building their business, and we really wanted our own capacity in-house to grow rapidly as we're investing in some of the best creative minds and have more and more content that we're controlling through our production apparatus, both for all of the networks and the digital platforms. And Chris Phillip, the first day I started at Reveille, he arrived in my office and helped introduce me to a Brazilian network head. And by the end of the week, he had delivered the first check to our company. It was around $11,000 for a format option. But it's the kind of thing you frame and you put on your wall. And so I really like working with people who I've had a rhythm with, who I've known, who understand that it's a 24/7 business and that it requires, you know, everything.
That's great. Well, and again, you've got a lot of businesses under your umbrella, but you're also, which people may not know, you're also setting up some other companies, and you're also working in partnership with outside companies in new and different ways. And I think that leads us in a very bad segue to what you want to announce here.
Yeah. So I'm really excited, and I asked Tony to come down and connect because many people may be aware it was leaked earlier in the year that Tony DeSanto and Liz Gately, who I'd love to bring out on the stage as well, is Liz, superstar producers, that they have formed a partnership and a company, and I really believe in a model of creative-led companies, and that the company needs at its head people who really understand content and creativity. And between the groundbreaking programming that Liz and Tony have been responsible for, you know, from Jersey Shore to Teen Mom to Maid to The Hills, et cetera, that this is an exciting partnership. And what we want to do today is share with this group for the first time, and then we'll announce the initial slate, and for the first time really talk about the great work they're doing and what they've already done in bringing their amazing talent relationships to bear. So I thought you guys maybe would want to.
Yeah, actually, Liz, you want to take it away?
Sure. Tony and I have had the pleasure of being a team at MTV for over 8 years now, and now we get to officially partner in Diga. We're going to be an independent production studio, partnering with new people, and we're going to produce scripted, reality, and film series. And we are so excited to be partnering with Ben, who generously funded our company and will be doing all of our distribution. So we're really excited to take what we did at MTV, which was pop culture driven hits, scripted and reality, and bring it out to partner with the community and bring it to all networks now. So.
Yeah. And we'll have a continued relationship with MTV, which has been our home for a long time. They were generous enough to give us a number of series and pilot guarantees in exchange for us staying through the end of the year.
Yeah, that was a fun negotiation, basically extending their employment contract, but it worked out well because now they're both continuing to be invested in each other, MTV and Tony and Liz.
And we love working with them, and we're so excited to work with Ben and Electus, and it's just, we're in day 11 or day 14 of our company, and it's very exciting so far. So
why don't you tell them a little bit about some of the shows and partners you've brought on board?
We've got a number of things already up and running, and some of the stuff that we can talk about. We're doing 3 series with Jimmy Kimmel and his Jack Hole Industries. We've got a comedy series.
What's his company name again?
Jack Hole
Thank you.
Industries. What? Oh,
I
God,
just
sorry,
think that's
sorry.
funny.
Sorry. I'm so used to saying it by now, I didn't even miss the joke. I didn't know. There's a comedy series with Nick Cannon, who we've had a long relationship with as a producer. We've produced Wild 'N Out with him, and he brought us a talent we really like, Amanda Diva, so we're working on a comedy show with her. And we've also got a fashion-based series with Jill Martin, who is a Today Show correspondent, the Knicks sideline reporter. She's also the author of Fashion for Dummies and the upcoming book, I Have Nothing to Wear, and we're excited about doing something in the fashion space, a format. And we just came back from a shoot in Panama for a series, a pilot that we can't talk about yet, but we're having fun. So.
We'll also be bringing Teen Wolf with us from MTV.
Oh yes, and we're executive producing the Teen Wolf, the MTV series. We're taking that with us, so we developed that at MTV. It's a reinvention of the Michael J. Fox film. It's in name only. It's actually more horror drama kind of thing, so we're really excited about that. And Jeff Davis, the writer, creator of Criminal Minds, is the showrunner and wrote it, and Russell Mulcahy, who I've been a fan of for a long time, did a lot of the early MTV videos, is directing it, and he also directed Highlander, so it's exciting.
So it's been a busy 2 weeks for these guys, and we're really thrilled to be in partnership and to, looking to do more of these kind of partnerships. We brought Jason Bateman and Will Arnett together to do Dum Dum. We have College Humor, who really is one of the most robust and dynamic content companies around, and Notional, another company many of you are familiar with, who are developing and creating some of the best programming, and 5x5, led by Emmy Award winner Craig Armstrong and Rick Ringback. And so trying to build a little bit like the old Steve Ross music system, and so I'm calling these guys Geffen today. But so stay tuned, as my friend Norman Lear would say. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us here.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.